Using Angular Router. Unlike a traditional website, Angular uses a single-page model in which only a single page or a single HTML page is needed to render many views, and these views are called components. And we render these views to a single root element in this web page. So to achieve this result, Angular has a built-in router service system, which includes a set of APIs that enables navigation between these different components. It does this by letting you configure a very specific route, which is a URL pattern or path that is mapped directly to a component. And when the URL is matched, then the component is rendered to the view through a router outlet directive in the template. So let's take an example. Let's see an example of how this works. So here, let's say that we're going to have this folder to represent the view or a component in our application. And the www represents the URLs to these views. And then the Angular logo here represents the source code and the source to represent these different patterns. Now, the URL, we might expect to use some links that you see here to navigate to the associated component. And in order for this to work, you will have to configure a series of routing patterns in the source as shown here. So you create a routes object in this case, which contains a list of URL patterns. And each route takes a minimum of two properties, a path and a component that will be rendered when the pattern matches the URL. And there is also a chance that a user may enter an invalid path. So if that's the case, then it's usually a good idea to include a wildcard pattern, which is shown here with the 2 stars. This is also a catch-all to render a component to the view. So if you don't provide this pattern, then your user can see a default 404 error page, which is not very user-friendly. So let's see another diagram to show the workflow of how the router system works. So here we have a user who might want to visit the About page. Right? So when this happens, then the router system will detect that, and it will check in the source to see if there is a route that matches that pattern. And since there is a route that matches that pattern, then it's going to invoke and call the component and render the component through the template, through the router outlet tag, and in turn it will render that to the view so they can see in the browser. And that's how it works. So here is another scenario. When there is a non-matching pattern, then the wildcard pattern will be caught and it will render another component to the view. If you don't supply that router or that view, then it will have a 404 screen on the browser. So let's go and create some routes. Okay, so here in our app, I'm going to go into the source folder and in the app folder here. And well, before we do that, I'm going to go back to the backend and see in the views folder, look at the layouts and see what we need to create. Okay, so we already created the about component. We created the register and login, and we need to create a provider. In this case, a provider and the contact. And also maybe a home component. Okay, so let's do that first before we start with the routes. So I'm going to add a new terminal here, go to the front end main stack. Okay, so let's generate a component called the provider. And I don't want any CSS and no tests. Okay, we'll just do one at a time. Okay, just up arrow, and then let's go do the other one. We'll create one for the home component. This will be the home page. Okay, is that it? I can't remember. Service, provider, contact. Yeah, and then the contact. I think we haven't created contact yet, have we? Nope, the contact. So and let's create one more for the not found. Okay, so this with the not found when we have a 404. Okay, so those are all the components we needed for our routes. So we can turn this off, and let's go to the front end and open the SRC and look into this file, the app routing module. So this is a module, just a regular ng module, as you can see, even though it's called app routing. And the reason why it's named that way is because you want to put all your routes inside this module. Now, routes can be created inside an ng module. You cannot create in a component like in here. Okay, it doesn't work. It must be inside a module. So you can put it here. So in this case, this would be like the outer or the global module for the routes. You can also create internal module routes inside each internal module, like the user module here. We created one for the about module here as well. You can put that in here, so it will route here as well. And you just have to export that out so that it will reach the app component or app module. Okay, but it's ideal to put all your routes in a single module like this. Now, as you can see here, line 5, they created a routes object. The colon here in TypeScript just signifies that it's a type of routes. Okay, just like a variable name. For example, if I say let n of type integer, so you put number here, and you put something like that. So you enforce this a variable to be of type number. So it has to be number. If I put a string, you will see that it will have an error. It would say that this is a number type, but you're inputting a string, so it doesn't work that way. Okay, so that's why TypeScript lets you do that. So this must be of type routes, which is another class that you import from this router core. And you also need the router module to make this work. So you need both of these when you create your own routes. And then once you create the route, then you will do the import, because imports are only for modules, right? Then you export that out to the app routing module, and that is in turn imported into the add module. As you can see here, we add it to the route module. Okay, so let's go in here and create some routes. Right in here, it's going to be a list of routes. So the first one here, let's do the home component. Let's go this way. So put the path property assigned to the home. The home will be just a blank a URL. Okay, you don't want to put a slash. Angular does not recognize that, so you can't do like about or things like that. If you do that, it's going to be very different from what you expect. Okay, so without the slash, that's going to be the home component, and here put the component is going to be the home component. Okay, and it will import that automatically for us, as you see up here. So let me duplicate this line a few times. Just press the Alt Shift on line 7 and just press down arrow for a couple times. And then we just fill these in. So let's say this is the about page, and then contact, and the order here is these order here, it doesn't really matter, but the star is. So a contact, let's put a login here, a register, and we have the provider. I think we call providers. And let's do one more for the 2 stars. This is the wildcard. Okay, this is the catch all. So you always want to put this in the very last. If you put above it, anything that comes after this 2 stars will not be caught by the router. Okay, so this is the catch-all. So let's fill these in. This will be the not found component. Here's just the providers, and here is the register. Okay, login. Okay, so all those are now created. So all these routes are now available, and actually later on we're gonna create another path. We'll come in here and add in here as well, because when we do the edit, we want to be able to do something like this, a router with an ID. Okay, so we'll do that later. Or we can have here, yeah, we can do that. Well, let's do it later because it'll be a little confusing. Okay, so now our routes are all set. Remember, we create that, we export it, import it, and we export it out. The for routes here, it just means that you are going to pass all these routes to the root component. Okay, and let me just show you really quickly here. If I do that and take it out, there are 2 options here. You have a for root and for child. So for child, that means if you have child components, child routes, that's also doable. And we're not going to do that in this course, but you can have child routes as well. If that's the case, then only the routes in the child module will be used in this case. But that's for some other day. So for now, it's going to be just for the for root. And most of the time, you'll be using the for roots. Okay, so let's save that now. And then to make this work, you can see if you go to the browser now and see if this already take effect. So here, remember the previous video, you see at the bottom here, it has a home works down here. We did not show that before. And the reason why it shows here because of the router outlet. And because now we are matching the URL of the /home, right? The home page. And so it renders the home component here. If I now go to the URL and type in the about, you will see that it renders the about works here, even though it shows here too. This is a child tag. We put it in here. So it will always be visible here. But this one here is shows because of the router outlet. Okay. So this time let's go and we're going to move all of these here. Okay, all of these here into the home component. So when you navigate to the home link like this, right, only then will you see this. If I navigate to the about page, then all of these will not be shown, but this about component will be rendered here, and vice versa, and so forth for every component. Okay, so let's go and do that now. So in here, and let's go to the app component. So all of these here, this is the app template, right? The root initially, but we're going to move all of these to the home component. I think from here, line 20 or 19, the H1 title, all the way to the end of this tag, really. So all the way to I think line 65. Let's cut all of these and put it into the home component over here. And we'll replace everything with that. Okay, so that's our home component. And I'm going to remove this as well. This is used in the previous video example, so it doesn't make sense anymore. So let's remove all of these. And so we don't need that. And so we don't have these functions. So also we need to move some of these functions to the home component as well. So we open that. And I'm going to go to the app component. Okay, and then copy everything here. All these code will be moved to the home component right in here. Okay, so now they're using the home component. And it should still be functional just like before. We just move it to a different component. So the app component has nothing here now. So this will be just a shell, right? This is the shell. Now I'll put here shell component. To house, what does it do? Well, it would house this router outlet here, and let's move this inside the div tag so everything will be centered. So you can see that it's much shorter now, and so whatever page you go to, every URL you go to, then the content of that module will be, or the component will be rendered at this particular location at line 20. And that's why if you're on the home page, you will see the home component render here. When you navigate to the about page, then it will be replaced with the router module for the about module and so on. Okay, so for example, if I go there now, save everything, and back to the browser, you see everything is now gone because we are now at the about page, right? So if I go back to the home page, you see that this is the home component. If I go to the login page, I get the login component. Okay, so that's how it works. And this is the end of this section. Now that we have explored some major features of the Angular framework, in the next section, we'll go ahead and configure the front end and start building our Angular application.